I bought her in a black market, says the Chinese billionaire CEO. I bought her in a black market, he said, as if love could ever be a transaction. Yet somewhere between guilt and devotion, he fell for the woman he was never meant to own. Before we go into details, click subscribe, like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. I bought her in a black market, says the Chinese billionaire CEO. Part 1. The Auction of Souls. The rain hammered against the bulletproof windows of the Mercedes S-Class as it wound through the narrow streets of Macau's forgotten district. Wei Chen sat in the back seat, his fingers drumming against his knee, a rare display of nervousness from a man who had built an empire worth $47 billion before his 35th birthday. Tonight was different. Tonight, he wasn't attending a board meeting or closing a merger. Tonight, he was descending into a world he had only heard whispers about in the dark corners of Shanghai's elite circles. Sir, we are approaching the location, his driver, old Zhao, said in Mandarin, his voice carefully neutral. Zhao had been with Wei for 15 years, since the early days when Wei was just another ambitious tech startup founder sleeping on office floors. Zhao had seen everything, said nothing, and that loyalty was worth more than gold. Wei nodded, straightening his Tom Ford suit jacket. Remember, Zhao, whatever you see tonight, you forget by morning. I've already forgotten, sir. The car pulled up to what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse near the port. The smell of salt water and diesel fuel permeated the air. Wei stepped out into the rain, and immediately, two men in black tactical gear materialized from the shadows. They said nothing, simply gesturing for him to follow. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed. Gone was any trace of its industrial past. Instead, Wei found himself in an opulent space that rivaled any five-star hotel. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their light reflecting off marble floors. The walls were draped in red silk, and the air was thick with incense and expensive perfume. Approximately 50 people occupied the space, businessmen, politicians, foreign dignitaries, all wearing masks that covered the upper half of their faces. Wei accepted his own mask from an attendant, a silver creation that made him look like some ancient warrior god. Mr. Chen, a voice purred beside him. He turned to find a woman in a gold chapeau, her face hidden behind an elaborate phoenix mask. We are honored by your presence. Your reputation precedes you. And you are. I am merely a facilitator. You may call me Madame Lian. I understand you are here for something specific. Wei's jaw tightened. He had spent 3 months tracking down this organization, paying bribes that would have funded a small hospital, calling in favors from people who operated in society's shadows. All because of a photograph. 6 months ago, his younger sister, Wei Ling, had shown him a picture on her phone. It was taken during one of her humanitarian trips to rural Yunnan province. In the photograph, a young woman stood among a group of village children, teaching them to read. Her face was partially turned away from the camera, but something about her had struck Wei like lightning. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was beautiful, with delicate features and hair that fell like a waterfall of black silk. It was something in her posture, in the way she held herself with quiet dignity despite her shabby surroundings. Who is she? Wei had asked, his voice strangled. Ling had shrugged. Just one of the volunteer teachers. I think her name is Mai. She didn't talk much. Seemed sad, you know? But the children loved her. Wei had hired private investigators. What they discovered had turned his blood to ice. The girl's name was Zhong Mai. She was 23 years old. 6 months ago, she had been kidnapped from that very village and sold to a human trafficking ring. The trail led here, to Macau, to this underground auction house where the wealthy and powerful came to purchase human beings like livestock. I'm looking for someone, Wei said to Madame Lian, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. A young woman, early 20s, from Yunnan province. She would have arrived within the last 6 months. Madame Lian's smile was visible even behind her mask. We have several items that might interest you. Please, take a seat. The auction begins shortly. Wei wanted to burn this place to the ground. He wanted to call every police contact he had, every government official in his pocket. But he knew that would only scatter these cockroaches into new hiding places. And more importantly, it might get Mai killed before he could find her. So he took his seat in the front row and waited, his hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The lights dimmed. A stage at the far end of the warehouse illuminated, and Madame Lian stepped into the spotlight. "Distinguished guests," she announced in flawless Mandarin, then repeated in English, "Welcome to tonight's special exhibition. We have curated an exceptional collection for your consideration. Each item has been thoroughly vetted, documented, and prepared. As always, discretion is paramount. Payments are to be made in cryptocurrency or through our secure banking partners. No refunds, no exchanges." Wei felt sick. Items. She called them items. The first item was led onto the stage, a young woman, perhaps 19, from Eastern Europe based on her features. She wore a simple white dress and kept her eyes downcast. The bidding started at $50,000 and quickly escalated. Wei watched in horror as wealthy men around him raised their paddles as casually as if they were bidding on artwork. She sold for $320,000 to a man in the back row. Then came a young man, barely 20. Then another woman. Then 2 children, twins, no more than 12 years old. Wei's stomach churned, but he forced himself to remain still, to show no reaction. He couldn't tip his hand. Not yet. The parade of human suffering continued for nearly 2 hours. Wei's soul felt stained by simply bearing witness to this atrocity. He had begun to wonder if his information had been wrong, if Mai wasn't here at all, when Madame Lian's voice cut through his thoughts. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have something truly special. This next item is particularly exquisite, a rare combination of beauty, education, and untouched purity that is increasingly difficult to find in today's market." The curtain at the back of the stage parted, and Wei's heart stopped. It was her. Zhong Mai walked onto the stage with her head held high, though Wei could see the slight tremor in her hands. She wore a traditional Chinese dress in pale blue silk that made her look like something from an ancient painting. Her hair had been styled elaborately, pinned up with jade ornaments. But it was her eyes that captured Wei, dark, intelligent eyes that held pain and defiance in equal measure. She wasn't broken. Despite everything they had done to her, whatever horrors she had endured, she wasn't broken. "This is Mai," Madame Lian continued, circling the young woman like a predator. 23 years old, university educated, Beijing Normal University, no less. She speaks Mandarin, English, and basic by language from her minority heritage. She's a trained teacher, accomplished in traditional arts including calligraphy and guzheng. She has been with us for 4 months and has been thoroughly prepared. Wei's mind raced. 4 months. 4 months of hell. What had they done to her in that time? Most importantly, Madame Lian said with a sly smile, she has been medically verified as untouched. A virgin, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, increasingly rare and valuable. The room erupted in murmurs. Wei saw men leaning forward in their seats, their interest clearly piqued. His rage threatened to overwhelm his control. "We'll start the bidding at $100,000. $100,000, a voice called immediately from the back. $150, another shouted. $200,000. The price climbed rapidly. Wei waited, watching the other bidders, calculating. He needed to win, but he also needed to seem like just another buyer, not someone with a personal connection. $500,000, someone called. The room fell momentarily silent at the jump in price. Wei turned slightly and saw the bidder, a heavy-set man in his 60s, wearing an elaborate dragon mask. Something about the man's posture, the proprietary way he looked at Mai, made Wei's skin crawl. $500,000 going once, Madame Lian said. "Do I hear 550? Wei raised his paddle. 550,000. The dragon-masked man turned to look at him, and Wei felt the weight of his glare even through the mask. 600,000, the man counted, his voice thick with barely controlled desire. 650, Wei responded calmly. 700,000. Around them, other bidders had fallen silent, sensing the personal nature of the competition. On stage, Mai's eyes flickered between Wei and the other man, her expression unreadable. 800,000, Wei said, his voice steady. The dragon-masked man stood up, his bulk intimidating. $1 million. Gasps echoed through the warehouse. It was an astronomical sum, even by the standards of this twisted marketplace. Wei stood as well, turning to face his opponent directly. In that moment, he channeled every bit of ruthless businessman reputation he had built over 15 years. He let the full force of his wealth, power, and determination show in his posture. $2 million, Wei said quietly, but his voice carried through the entire space. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. The dragon-masked man's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Wei thought he might physically attack. But then, slowly, the man sat back down, his shoulders sagging in defeat. $2 million, Madame Lian repeated, her voice slightly awed. Going once. Going twice. She paused, scanning the room. Sold. To the gentleman in the silver mask. Wei's legs nearly gave out from relief, but he forced himself to remain standing, to nod graciously as if he had just purchased a piece of art rather than a human being's freedom. Congratulations, sir, Madame Lian said, approaching him. Please come with me to complete the transaction. Your item will be prepared for transport. I'll wait, Wei said firmly. I'm not leaving without her.
Something flickered across Madame Lian's visible features. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. As you wish. This way. Wei followed her to a private room behind the stage, where several men in suits sat behind computers. The transaction was handled with disturbing efficiency. Cryptocurrency transferred from untraceable accounts Wei had set up specifically for this purpose. Documents were signed, though Wei knew they were meaningless. This was hardly a legal contract. But it satisfied whatever twisted sense of bureaucracy this organization maintained. She'll be brought to you shortly, Madame Lian said. I must say, Mr. Chen, oh yes, we know who you are, mask or not, you paid quite a premium. I hope she proves worth it. Where are the others going? Wei asked suddenly. The other people sold tonight. Madame Lian's expression cooled. That is not your concern. You purchased one item. Be content with that. How many operations like this exist? Mr. Chen, Madame Lian said, her voice sharp now, I would advise you to take your purchase and leave. Asking questions about our organization is unwise. You're a smart man. I'm sure you understand. The threat was clear. Wei nodded slowly, filing away every detail of the room, the faces, the setup. He would return to this. Once Mai was safe, he would dedicate whatever resources necessary to burning this entire network to the ground. 20 minutes later, a door opened, and Mai was escorted in by 2 guards. She had been given a simple coat over her dress and a small bag that presumably contained her few possessions. Her hair was still elaborately styled, but her face had been cleaned of the heavy makeup they had applied for the auction. She looked at Wei with those intelligent, defiant eyes, and he saw no gratitude there, only wariness and barely suppressed fear. She's all yours, one of the guards said. Madame Lian reminds you that sales are final. No returns, no complaints. Wei wanted to rage at them, to strike them down for speaking about a human being this way. Instead, he simply nodded and gestured to Mai. Call me. We are leaving. She hesitated, and he could see her mind working, calculating her options. Running. Screaming. But this was a warehouse full of criminals and buyers of human flesh. There was nowhere to run, no one who would help. Slowly, she walked toward him. They exited through a back entrance where Zhao was waiting with the car. The old driver's face remained carefully neutral as Wei opened the back door for Mai. Please, Wei said softly, speaking directly to her for the first time. You're safe now. I promise. Mai looked at him for a long moment, and then, perhaps because she had no other choice, she got into the car. Wei climbed in after her, careful to maintain distance between them. Zhao, take us to the Peninsula Hotel. As the car pulled away from the warehouse, Wei finally removed his mask. He turned to Mai, who had pressed herself against the opposite door, as far from him as possible. My name is Wei Chen, he said gently. I know you're frightened. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I swear to you, Zhong Mai, I did not buy you to harm you. I bought you to free you. For the first time, emotion cracked across her carefully controlled features. How do you know my name? She whispered. I've been searching for you for 3 months. Since I first saw your photograph teaching children in Yanyang village. Why? The word came out broken, confused. Why would you search for me? I'm nobody. I'm nothing. You're not nothing, Wei said fiercely. You're a person. A human being with rights and dignity that should never have been taken from you. What happened to you was evil, but it doesn't define your worth. Tears spilled down Mai's cheeks, the first genuine emotion she had allowed herself to show since being brought onto that stage. You don't understand, she said, her voice barely audible. You don't know what they did. You don't know what I've become. Wei's heart broke. Then tell me everything, and I will help you bear it. But Mai turned away, staring out the window at the rain-soaked streets of Macau, and said nothing more. The gilded cage. The Peninsula Hotel suite was probably larger than the entire house Mai had grown up in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Victoria Harbour, the Hong Kong skyline glittering like a constellation of earthbound stars. The furniture was antique European, the bathroom larger than her university dormitory room had been. It was beautiful and opulent and felt like another kind of prison. Wei had taken a separate suite on the same floor. Before leaving her alone, he had placed a credit card on the marble entryway table. For anything you need, he had said. Clothes, food, whatever makes you comfortable. The card has no limit. Tomorrow, we'll fly to Shanghai. I have a secured apartment there where you'll be safe while we figure out next steps. Mai had stood frozen in the center of the suite, unable to process his words. Free. Safe. These concepts felt foreign, impossible. For 4 months, she had lived in a nightmare from which there was no waking. And now this stranger, this billionaire who had paid $2 million for her like she was a vintage car or a rare painting, claimed he wanted to help her? It made no sense. Men didn't spend $2 million for altruistic reasons. She had learned that much in her 23 years, and especially in the past 4 months of hell. After Wei left, Mai had simply stood in the middle of the suite for nearly an hour, unable to move, unable to think. Her mind felt fractured, scattered across too many traumatic memories and impossible present circumstances. Finally, survival instinct kicked in. She walked through the suite, checking every door, every window, memorizing exits. The windows didn't open. They were sealed, probably for guest safety, but now feeling like another barrier to freedom. There was only one door leading to the hallway, and she didn't have a key card. Was she still a prisoner, just in a more beautiful cell? Mai caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror and almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. The elaborate hairstyle made her look like a doll, not a person. The jade ornaments they had placed in her hair probably cost more than her father earned in a year. With shaking hands, she began removing the pins and ornaments, letting her hair fall down her back. She scrubbed the remaining makeup from her face with hotel soap until her skin was red and raw. Then she stood under the shower spray so hot it almost burned, trying to wash away the feeling of all those eyes on her during the auction, the way they had looked at her like merchandise, like mate. She scrubbed until her skin was nearly bleeding, but she still didn't feel clean. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a hotel bathrobe that was softer than anything she had ever owned, she found that room service had delivered food, a full spread of Chinese and Western dishes, enough to feed 6 people. There was also a note, written in elegant calligraphy, "Please eat. You need your strength. If you need anything, dial 0 for my suite. I won't disturb you tonight. W.C." Mai stared at the food. Her stomach was hollow. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten a full meal. At the trafficking compound, they had fed the girls just enough to keep them alive and attractive, nothing more. But the sight of so much food made her feel sick rather than hungry. Still, she forced herself to eat some rice and vegetables, knowing Wei was right. She needed strength. Whatever his true intentions were, whatever happened next, she would need all her resources to survive. After eating, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She hadn't slept properly in months, always on edge, always afraid of what the guards might do, what new horror awaited. But here, With the door locked and her stomach full, her body demanded rest. Mai crawled into the enormous bed, and despite her fear and confusion, she fell into the deepest sleep she'd had in 4 months. She dreamed of her village, of her father's weathered face, her mother's gentle hands, her younger brother's laugh. She dreamed of the small school where she had taught, of children's bright eyes and eager questions. She dreamed of the life that had been stolen from her. And then the dreams turned dark. She was back in the compound, in the training rooms where they had tried to break her spirit and remake her into a compliant product. She heard the screams of other girls, the cruel laughter of guards, felt hands grabbing at her. Mai woke up gasping, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Sweat soaked through the expensive hotel sheets. For a moment, she didn't know where she was, and panic seized her chest. Then she saw the soft dawn light filtering through the windows, the luxury suite around her, and remembered. Macau. The auction. The man in the silver mask who had paid $2 million for her freedom. Or had he? There was a soft knock at the door. Mai's entire body tensed. May. Wei's voice came through the door, gentle and careful. I hope I didn't wake you. I brought breakfast. May I come in? Every instinct screamed at her not to answer, to hide, to prepare for whatever came next. But she was trapped here regardless. And some part of her, the part that had kept her alive through 4 months of hell, knew that her best chance of actual freedom was to understand this man's true intentions. One moment, she called out, her voice hoarse from sleep and screaming in nightmares. She found clothes laid out on a chair, simple, expensive brands in exactly her size. How had he known? The investigators, she realized. The ones who had tracked her here had probably compiled a complete dossier. The thought was both disturbing and oddly comforting. At least he had planned, had prepared. This wasn't some impulsive purchase. She dressed in dark jeans and a soft cashmere sweater, then opened the door. Wei stood in the hallway with a breakfast cart, looking nothing like the intimidating figure in the mask from last night. He wore casual clothes, jeans and a simple white button-down shirt, and his face was kind, open. He looked younger than she had thought, probably mid-30s, with intelligent eyes and a gentle expression. Good morning, he said, smiling slightly. May I? Mai stepped back, allowing him to wheel the cart inside. He moved to the sitting area, setting out dishes on the coffee table, kanji, dim sum, fresh fruit, tea.
I didn't know what you liked, he said, so I ordered a variety. Please, eat whatever appeals to you. Mai sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, as far from him as possible. Wei noticed and deliberately chose a chair across the room, maintaining maximum distance between them. I imagine you have questions, he said quietly. And fears. Both are completely valid. I want to try to answer the questions and hopefully alleviate some of the fears. Why? Mai asked, the question she had asked last night emerging again. Why did you pay $2 million for someone you don't know? What do you want from me? Wei was silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. 3 months ago, my sister showed me a photograph. It was taken during her humanitarian work in Yunnan. You were in that photograph, teaching children. Something about that image. I can't fully explain it. It moved me. Made me wonder about you, who you were, what your story was. He paused, his expression pained. I had my staff research the photo, trying to find you. What I discovered was horrific. The reports that you had been taken, sold. I couldn't just do nothing. I had the resources to find you, so I did. And then I had the resources to buy your freedom, so I did. People don't do things like that, Mai said flatly. Not without wanting something in return. You're right, Wei acknowledged. Most people don't. But I'm not most people. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And I've recently come to realize that money has to mean something, has to be used for something beyond just making more money. If I can't use my resources to help someone who desperately needs help, then what's the point of any of it? Mai wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe that someone could simply be good, simply help without expectation of return. But 4 months had taught her that the world didn't work that way. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Now, you rest and recover, Wei said. We'll fly to Shanghai today. I have an apartment there, secure, private, comfortable. You'll stay there as long as you need. I'll arrange for a therapist who specializes in trauma, if you want one. Medical care, whatever you need. And then you decide. Your life, your choices. If you want to return to your family, I'll arrange it safely and provide financial support so you never have to worry about security again. If you want to continue your education, go back to teaching, I'll fund it. If you want to do something else entirely, we'll figure it out. This is your life, I'm just trying to help you reclaim it. Tears welled in Mai's eyes despite her efforts to hold them back. You don't understand. I can never go back to my family. I'm ruined. What I've become, it would destroy them. Wei leaned forward, his expression fierce. Listen to me carefully, Zhong Mai. What happened to you was not your fault. You are not ruined. You are not destroyed. You are a survivor of a terrible crime, but you are still you. Your intelligence, your kindness, your strength, none of that has been taken away. It's still there, even if you can't feel it right now. You don't know what they did, Mai whispered, her voice breaking. You don't know what I had to do to survive. Then tell me, Wei said gently. If you need to share it, I'll listen. If you need to keep it private, that's okay too. But either way, it doesn't change the fundamental truth. You deserve help, support, and a chance to rebuild your life. Let me give you that chance. For the first time since her kidnapping, Mai felt something crack inside her, the wall she had built to survive, the numbness that had kept her functioning through horror. And with that crack came a flood of emotion that she had been holding back for 4 months. She began to cry, not the quiet, controlled tears from last night, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal in her soul. All the fear, the pain, the degradation, the loss, it poured out of her in waves. Wei didn't move toward her, didn't try to touch or comfort her physically. He simply sat there, bearing witness to her grief, letting her release it without judgment or expectation. When the storm finally passed, Mai was left feeling hollow but somehow lighter, as if crying had purged some poison from her system. I'm sorry, she said, her voice hoarse. Don't apologize, Wei said firmly. Never apologize for your pain. They sat in silence for a long moment, and then Mai made a decision. If this man truly wanted to help, if there was even a chance his intentions were genuine, she needed to test that. She needed to tell him the truth of what had happened and see if he still looked at her with that same gentle respect. They took me from the village at night, she began, her voice flat and distant, as if telling someone else's story. I was walking home from the school. 3 men grabbed me, put something over my face. When I woke up, I was in a van with 5 other girls. We drove for 2 days. Wei listened without interruption, his expression controlled but his hands clenched tightly in his lap. They took us to a compound in the countryside. I don't know where. They kept us blindfolded during transfers. There were maybe 30 girls there when I arrived. They separated us by age and marketability. The younger, prettier ones went to one wing. The older or less attractive ones to another wing. I don't know what happened to that second group, but I heard rumors. Organ harvesting. Labor trafficking. Nothing good. Mai's voice remained eerily calm, detached. They called our wing training. They taught us how to be pleasing, how to act, what to say. They showed us videos of what would happen if we disobeyed or tried to escape. Some of the videos were real, girls who had tried to run, who had fought back. The punishments were creative. She saw Wei's jaw clench, saw the rage in his eyes, but she continued. I learned quickly that the best way to survive was to show compliance on the surface, while keeping your true self hidden deep inside. I smiled when told to smile. I spoke when told to speak. I learned the skills they wanted us to learn. And I waited. Waited for what? Wei asked softly. For an opportunity. For a moment of weakness I could exploit. For anything that might let me escape. But that moment never came. They were too professional, too careful. And after a while, I realized that the only way out was through sale. That if I was sold to someone relatively decent, someone who didn't want to torture or kill me, I might eventually be able to escape. So at the auction, Wei said, understanding dawning in his eyes, when you walked out with your head high, looking defiant. It was calculated, Mai admitted. I knew that men who buy women at auctions want either complete submission or a challenge to break. I couldn't play completely submissive. It would have attracted the worst kinds of buyers. But showing spirit, intelligence, defiance, that could attract someone who wanted a prize, a trophy. Someone proud of their acquisition who might treat me marginally better. Wei sat back, looking at her with what seemed like awe. You're brilliant, he said quietly. Even in that hell, you were strategizing, surviving, planning. I didn't have a choice, Mai said bitterly. Survival was the only option. And now? Mai laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Now I don't know what I am. I survived, but I'm not sure what of me is left. I'm not the woman who taught children in that village anymore. That person died the night they took me. No, Wei said firmly. That person didn't die. She evolved, adapted, became stronger. The woman who taught those children is still inside you. She's just been through hell and needs time to heal. Mai wanted to believe him. But belief required hope, and hope was dangerous. Hope got you hurt. Why don't you have breakfast? Wei suggested gently, changing the subject. And then we'll fly to Shanghai. You can rest there, think about what you want to do next. No pressure, no expectations. Mai nodded slowly and reached for some kanji. As she ate, she watched Wei carefully. He was checking his phone, responding to what appeared to be work emails, giving her space. Nothing about his behavior seemed predatory or possessive. Maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. Or maybe this was just a different kind of trap, one she hadn't learned to recognize yet. Only time would tell. Part 3, Shadows of the Past. The private jet to Shanghai was unlike anything Mai had ever experienced. She had flown commercial once, when she first went to Beijing for university, a cramped, uncomfortable journey that had taken hours. This was different. This was a flying luxury hotel, complete with bedroom, office, and staff ready to meet any need. Mai sat by the window, watching the clouds drift past below. Wei worked on his laptop across the cabin, occasionally taking calls in rapid-fire Mandarin that involved numbers so large they were meaningless to her. This was his world, private jets, billion-dollar deals, casual luxury that most people couldn't even imagine. And now, somehow, she was in this world too. Except she didn't belong here. She was a village girl with a teaching certificate and trauma that ran bone deep. She was a glitch in his perfect system, a charity case he had taken on for reasons she still didn't fully understand. Mai, Wei called softly, closing his laptop. Can I ask you something? She tensed automatically but nodded. Your family. Do they know what happened to you? Pain lanced through her chest. They know I disappeared. The police were called, but in rural areas, these things, the police don't try very hard. Especially when the missing person is just a girl. They probably think I'm dead by now. Wei's expression darkened. Would you like me to contact them? Let them know you're alive and safe. No. The word came out sharper than Mai intended. She took a breath, trying to calm herself. No. Please. They can't know. They can never know what happened. Mai. You don't understand, she interrupted, her voice desperate. In my village, in my culture, a girl who has been taken, sold, who has endured what I endured. I would be considered ruined, unmarriageable, a source of shame for my family. My younger brother would never find a good match because of me. My father's honor would be destroyed. That's not fair, Wei said angrily. You're the victim. None of this was your fault. Fair doesn't matter. It's how things are. If I go back, I bring shame and suffering to everyone I love. Better they think I'm dead and grieve for what I was than know what I've become and be ashamed. Wei was quiet for a long moment, his expression troubled. What if I could help change that? What if I could provide your family with enough financial security that the gossip and judgment wouldn't matter? Mai shook her head. You can't buy cultural shame away. Some things are deeper than money. Maybe, Wei conceded. But at least think about it. Your family loves you. Your mother, father, brother, they deserve to know you're alive. And you deserve the chance to see them again, even if it's complicated. Mai turned back to the window, unable to continue the conversation. She couldn't think about her family, couldn't allow herself to remember her mother's soft singing or her father's proud smile when she got into university. Those memories were too painful, reminders of a life that no longer existed, a version of herself she could never return to. They landed in Shanghai as the sun was setting, the city skyline ablaze with light. Another car waited on the tarmac, this time a more modest sedan rather than the luxury Mercedes from Macau. I thought you might prefer something less conspicuous, Wei explained as they drove through the city. The apartment is in a secure building, but I've made sure your presence there won't draw attention. The building was in the French Concession, a beautiful area of tree-lined streets and historic architecture mixed with modern developments. The apartment itself was on the top floor, a spacious 3-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But what struck me most was how different it felt from the hotel suite. The peninsula had been beautiful but sterile, like a display room. This apartment felt lived in, warm. There were books on the shelves, art on the walls, plants in the windows. It felt like a home. I had my assistant prepare it, Wei explained, watching her reaction carefully. I wanted it to feel comfortable, not like a hotel. The main bedroom is yours. The second bedroom is an office. I thought you might want a space to read or study if you decide to resume your education. The third bedroom is a guest room. Where will you stay? Mai asked. I have a penthouse on the other side of the city, Wei said. I won't be staying here. This is your space, Mai. Your home for as long as you need it. Mai felt tears prick her eyes again. When had she become such a crier? She had never been this emotional before her kidnapping. But then, she had never had to process this much trauma before either. Why are you doing this? She asked again, the question that kept circling in her mind. Really? What do you get out of helping me? Wei was silent for a long moment, seeming to struggle with how to answer. Finally, he said, my mother died when I was 12. Cancer. My father had just started his business. We were poor, struggling. We couldn't afford the best treatments, the best doctors. She suffered for months before the end. He moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. By the time I was 25, I had made my first billion. And the first thing I thought was that. Continue. If I had this money when my mother was sick, I could have saved her. I could have given her every possible treatment, every comfort. I could have bought her more time, maybe even bought her life. He turned back to Mai, his expression raw. But I couldn't. Because you can't go back. You can't undo the past. All you can do is try to make the future better. So I told myself that I would use my wealth to help people when I could, how I could. But for years, it was just donations to hospitals, scholarships for students. Distant, impersonal charity that made me feel better but didn't really change individual lives. Wei paused, choosing his words carefully. When I saw your photo, when I learned what had happened to you, I realized, here was someone I actually could save. Here was a life I could directly change. It wasn't too late, like it was with my mother. I could actually do something meaningful, something real. So I did. Mai absorbed this, trying to understand. So I'm, what? Your redemption? Your way of making peace with your mother's death? No, Wei said firmly. You're not a symbol or a proxy or a project. You're a person who deserved help, and I was in a position to provide it. My motivation might have come from my own history, but this is about you, not me. Your healing, your recovery, your future, those things matter independent of my reasons for helping. It was the most honest answer he had given her, and somehow that made it easier to accept. Everyone had their own reasons for doing things. At least Wei's reasons seemed genuine, even if they were complicated. Okay, Mai said quietly. Thank you. For explaining. For all of this. Wei smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. You're welcome. Now, let me show you how everything works, and then I'll leave you to settle in. He walked her through the apartment, showing her how to use the security system, where emergency contacts were posted, how to access the building's amenities. The refrigerator and pantry had been stocked with food. The closets in her bedroom contained clothes in her size, ranging from casual wear to formal outfits. If you need anything, anything at all, my number is programmed into that phone, Wei said, pointing to a new smartphone on the kitchen counter. Call or text anytime, day or night. I also have a number for Dr. Lin, a trauma therapist who has agreed to see you whenever you're ready. There's no pressure, but the option is there. What if? Mai hesitated, unsure how to voice her fear. What if they find me? The people who had me? Won't they be looking for their property? Wei's expression went cold and hard, reminding her suddenly that this gentle, kind man was also a billionaire CEO who had built his empire through ruthlessness when necessary. They won't find you, he said flatly. This building has security that rivals government installations. I've also hired private protection. You'll never see them, but they're watching. And I've put out word through certain channels that you are under my personal protection. Anyone who touches you will have to answer to me and everything I can bring to bear. Trust me when I say that most criminals, even ones in the trafficking business, don't want to make an enemy of someone with my resources. It should have been arrogant, that kind of statement. But Mai believed him. She had seen in the auction house that Wei Chen's name carried weight even in that dark underworld. And she had felt the cold fury beneath his gentle exterior. He would protect her, she realized, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because he had claimed responsibility for her safety, and Wei Chen did not fail at things he committed to. Okay, she said. I believe you. Good. Wei moved toward the door, then paused. Mai, one more thing. I know you have no reason to trust me fully yet. I know this whole situation is strange and overwhelming. But I want you to know that this apartment, the phone, the security, all of it is yours without strings. If tomorrow you decide you want nothing more to do with me, that you want to leave and start fresh somewhere else, I'll help you do that. You're not trapped here. You're not obligated to me. You're free. Genuinely free. With that, he left, and Mai was alone in her new home. She walked slowly through the space, touching the furniture, the books, the soft fabrics of the curtains. It felt surreal, like she might wake up at any moment back in the compound, this entire thing just a cruel dream her mind had created to escape reality. But the apartment remained solid, real. The view from the windows showed Shanghai's glittering nightscape. The refrigerator hummed quietly in the kitchen. The bed in the master bedroom was soft and inviting, covered in high thread count sheets that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe back in the village. Mai took a long shower, washing away the travel grime and emotional exhaustion of the day. Then she put on one of the silk pajama sets she found in the dresser and climbed into bed. For the first time in 4 months, she was alone in a room with a door she could lock from the inside. No guards, no other prisoners, no one who might hurt her in the night. She should have felt safe. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt terrified. Because safety was an illusion, she had learned. Safety was something that could be ripped away in an instant by men with cruel intentions and no conscience. And the higher you allowed yourself to rise, the farther you had to fall. But exhaustion won out over fear, and eventually, Mai slept. The long road to trust. The first week in the apartment was the hardest. Mai woke every morning expecting to find herself back in the compound, expecting guards to burst through the door. When neither of those things happened, when she found herself still in the beautiful apartment with sunlight streaming through the windows, she almost couldn't process it. Wei kept his word about giving her space. He texted every morning, just simple messages like "Good morning, hope you slept well," or "The weather is nice today, consider getting some fresh air." He never pushed, never demanded responses. Sometimes Mai answered. Often she didn't. On the third day, she finally ventured out of the apartment. The building had a rooftop garden that was beautiful and peaceful. She sat there for hours, feeling the sun on her face, listening to the sounds of the city below. A few other residents passed through, but no one bothered her, respecting the universal urban code of minding your own business. It was on the rooftop that she finally broke down and called Dr. Lin, the therapist Wei had mentioned. "Hello, this is Mai," she said when the woman answered, her voice shaking. "Wei Chen gave me your number." "Mai, yes, I've been hoping you would call," Dr. Lin said warmly. Her voice was gentle but strong, not the syrupy, condescending tone I had feared. I have an opening tomorrow at 10 if you're available. No pressure. We can start whenever you're ready. Tomorrow is fine, I heard herself say. Dr. Lin's office was in a quiet building near People Square. The waiting room was small and private, designed to ensure patients wouldn't run into each other. Dr. Lin herself was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down in her office. I know how hard it is to take this step. Before we begin, I want to establish something. This is your space. You control what we talk about and when. I won't push you to discuss anything you're not ready for. My job is to provide support and tools for healing, not to interrogate you or make you relive trauma unnecessarily. I felt some of her tension ease. Wei told you what happened to me. He told me you had experienced trafficking and that you might need support. That's all. The specifics are yours to share or not share as you choose. They spent that first session just talking about normal things. Mai's childhood, her education, what she liked to study, what made her want to teach. It felt safe, like standing at the edge of a deep pool and just dipping your toes in rather than diving into the depths. By the end of the hour, Mai felt lighter somehow. She scheduled another appointment for the following week. When she returned to the apartment, she found a package waiting inside the door. A note on top read, "Thought you might enjoy these. W.C." Inside were books, a mixture of novels, poetry, and texts on education theory. At the bottom was a beautiful guzheng, the traditional Chinese zither that Madame Lian had mentioned I played. How had Wei known? Then she remembered, the investigators. They had compiled a complete profile. Part of her was disturbed by how much Wei knew about her, how thoroughly he had researched her life before they even met. But another part, the part that was so tired of being alone, was touched that he had paid attention, that he cared enough to remember small details about what she enjoyed. She ran her fingers over the guzheng strings, and the sound that emerged was pure and clear. She hadn't played since before her kidnapping. At the compound, there had been no music except what was piped through speakers, Western club music that all sounded the same, designed to train them to move their bodies in ways that pleased buyers. But this was different. This was music from her soul, from her culture, from the part of herself she thought had been destroyed. Mai played for hours that day, her fingers remembering patterns and melodies she thought she had forgotten. She played songs her mother had taught her, songs she had learned in university, songs that told stories of ancient emperors and love and loss. When she finally stopped, her fingers were sore and her face was wet with tears, but she felt more like herself than she had in months. She picked up her phone and sent Wei a text, "Thank you for the guzheng. It was very kind." His response came almost immediately, "I'm so glad you like it. If you ever want to play for someone, I'd be honored to listen. But no pressure." Mai stared at that message for a long time before responding, "Maybe someday." As the weeks passed, a routine developed. Mai saw Dr. Lin twice a week. She spent her days reading, playing music, and slowly beginning to write, something she had always enjoyed but never had time for before. She ventured out more frequently, exploring the neighborhood, visiting bookstores and cafes. Wei texted regularly but kept his physical distance, only visiting the apartment once every week or two to check if she needed anything. When he did visit, he always called first, always asked permission, always kept their interactions brief and proper. Slowly, incrementally, Mai began to relax. The constant hypervigilance started to fade. She slept better, ate better, began to feel like a person again rather than just a trauma response wearing human skin. Dr. Lin helped her understand that healing wasn't linear, that there would be good days and bad days, progress and setbacks. On the bad days, when nightmares jolted her awake or panic attacks made her feel like she couldn't breathe, Dr. Lin had taught her grounding techniques, ways to remind herself that she was safe, that the past was past. On one of his visits, about 6 weeks after they had arrived in Shanghai, Wei brought dinner, takeout from a Yunnan restaurant that specialized in the cuisine from Mai's home province. "I thought you might miss home," he explained, setting out the containers on the dining table. "This place is supposed to be very authentic." Mai stared at the food, Urkawai rice cakes, crossing the bridge noodles, rose flour cake, and felt emotion well up in her throat. These were the tastes of her childhood, of her mother's kitchen, of everything she had lost. "Thank you," she managed to say. They ate together in comfortable silence for a while, and then Wei spoke. "I have something to tell you. I've been working with some people, lawyers, investigators, and we've managed to identify several of the key players in the trafficking operation that held you. The warehouse in Macau, Madame Liane, the transport networks. We have evidence." Mai's chopsticks froze halfway to her mouth. "What are you going to do with it?" "That depends partly on you," Wei said carefully. "We can turn everything over to law enforcement. With your testimony, we could potentially shut down a significant part of their operation, rescue other victims, bring the perpetrators to justice." "But," Mai asked, hearing the unspoken caveat in his voice, "but that would mean going public with what happened to you. At least to some degree. There would be investigations, possibly a trial if they catch everyone involved. Your name could be kept out of the media, but people would know, lawyers, police, judges. And there's always the risk of leaks." Mai set down her chopsticks, her appetite gone. "And if I say no?" "Then we use the evidence differently. I have connections with certain international organizations that fight trafficking. They can use the information for their own operations without involving you directly. It won't bring the same level of justice, but it will still hurt these people, still save others." "What do you think I should do?" Mai asked. Wei met her eyes steadily. "I think you should do whatever makes you feel safest and most in control of your own story. There's no wrong answer here, Mai. You don't owe the world your pain, your testimony, your trauma. If coming forward would help you heal, help you feel like you fought back, then I support that. If staying private protects your peace and privacy, then I support that too. This is your choice." Mai thought about it for a long moment. Part of her wanted to see them all burn, wanted to testify in court and watch as Madame Liane and everyone else involved was sentenced to life in prison. She wanted justice, wanted vengeance. But another part of her, the part that was slowly, carefully rebuilding a sense of safety and normalcy, knew that going through a trial, reliving everything, having her life examined by strangers would set back all the progress she had made. "The second option," she finally said. "Give the evidence to the organizations that can use it quietly. I can't. I can't face them again. I can't put myself through that." Wei nodded, no judgment in his expression. "Okay. I'll make the arrangements. And Mai, you're not a coward for choosing this. You've already survived more than most people could imagine. You don't owe anyone more than you've already endured." After Wei left that night, Mai sat by the window and thought about justice versus healing, about public duty versus private peace. She thought about the other girls from the compound, the ones she had left behind, the ones being sold even now to horrible fates. Guilt gnawed at her. By not testifying, was she complicit in their continued suffering? But Dr. Lin had been clear. You cannot save everyone, Mai. You can barely save yourself right now. And saving yourself, healing yourself, that's not selfish. That's necessary. You're not responsible for fixing a system that victimized you. That burden should never be placed on survivors. So Mai made her peace with her choice and tried to focus on moving forward. Around the 3-month mark, something shifted. Mai realized one day that she had gone an entire week without a nightmare. That she had laughed, actually laughed, at something funny on TV. That she had made small talk with the woman at the coffee shop down the street and hadn't felt anxious or fearful. Small victories, but they felt monumental. She also realized that she looked forward to Wei's visits now. That she enjoyed their conversations, his quiet humor, the way he listened with full attention when she spoke. He had become something like a friend, though the circumstances of how they had met made it complicated to define their relationship. One evening, she finally invited him to hear her play the guzheng. He sat across from her in the living room, completely still and focused, as she performed a traditional piece called High Mountains and Flowing Water, a song about friendship and understanding. When she finished, she looked up to find tears on his cheeks. "That was beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for sharing that with me." "You gave me the instrument," Mai said. "It seemed only fair." They smiled at each other, and Mai felt something warm bloom in her chest. Not romantic, not yet, but the recognition that this man cared about her genuinely, that their connection was real and valuable. Wei, she said impulsively, will you tell me about your business? About what you do? I realize I know almost nothing about your life. So he told her about WeatherTech, the company he had founded, a technology firm that had started with weather prediction software and expanded into agricultural technology, renewable energy, and data analytics. He talked about the early days of near bankruptcy, the breakthrough that had saved everything, the rapid expansion that had made him a billionaire by 30. But success is strange, he admitted. The more money I made, the more isolated I became. People either wanted something from me or were intimidated by me. Genuine connection became almost impossible. My sister Ling is one of the few people in my life who still treats me like a normal person. I'd like to meet her someday, Mai said, to thank her for taking the photograph that started all of this. She'd like to meet you too, Wei said. She knows I've been helping someone, though I haven't told her the full story. I thought you'd want to control who knows what about your past. Thank you for that, Mai said sincerely, for respecting my privacy even with people close to you. As the evening drew to a close and Wei prepared to leave, Mai found herself not wanting him to go. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty when she was alone. Wei, she called as he reached the door. Would you want to have dinner again? Maybe make it a regular thing? Once or twice a week? The smile that lit up his face was like sunrise. I would love that, Mai. I really would. Part 5. Learning to hope again. The dinner invitation changed things between them, though neither addressed it directly. What had been occasional check-ins became twice-weekly gatherings where they cooked together, talked about everything and nothing, and slowly built a genuine friendship. Mai learned that Wei was funny in a dry, understated way, that he loved old kung fu movies and could quote dialogue from classics like The 36th Chamber of Shaolin, that he was terrible at cooking but earnestly tried to help in the kitchen anyway, following her instructions with the same intense focus he probably brought to business deals. Wei learned that Mai had a sharp wit when she felt safe enough to let it show, that she was brilliant at strategy games. They played Go sometimes after dinner, and she beat him far more often than he beat her, that she sang softly to herself when she thought no one was listening, her voice clear and lovely. They didn't talk about the trafficking, about the auction, about how they had met. Those topics felt like landmines that might destroy the comfortable space they were building. Instead, they talked about books and philosophy, about dreams and regrets, about the people they had been and the people they hoped to become. It was during one of these dinners, about 4 months after Mai had come to Shanghai, that Wei's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. I'm sorry, I need to take this, he said. It's my sister. He stepped into the other room, and Mai could hear his side of the conversation. Ling, slow down. What? When? Is he okay? I'll come immediately. No, cancel everything. I'll be there in an hour. He came back into the living room, his face pale and drawn. I have to go, he said, already grabbing his jacket. My father. He's had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. Go, Mai urged immediately. Go, be with your family. I'll be fine. Wei paused at the door, conflict clear in his expression. I don't know how long I'll be gone. Maybe several days if he needs surgery. Will you? I'll be fine, Mai repeated firmly. Your father needs you. Go. He left, and the apartment fell silent. Mai tried to occupy herself, reading, playing music, watching television, but she found herself worried about Wei, about his father whom she'd never met but who had clearly suffered through tragedy with his wife's death and worked hard to support his family. 3 days passed with only brief text updates from Wei. Father stable but needs bypass surgery. Surgery went well. Still in ICU but recovering. On the 4th day, Mai made a decision. She packed a small bag, called the driver that Wei had made available to her, and headed to the hospital. She found Wei in a private waiting room, looking exhausted. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. He looked up when she entered, surprise and something like relief flooding his features. Ma, what are you doing here? Being a friend, she said simply, setting down a bag of food she'd brought. When was the last time you ate? I don't remember. Then eat, she commanded, pulling out containers of soup and rice. You can't help your father if you collapse from exhaustion. Wei obeyed, and she could see how much he needed the food, the care, the presence of someone who wasn't another doctor with more bad news. How is he? Mai asked. Stable. The surgery went well, but he's weak. The doctor says it will be a long recovery. Wei set down his chopsticks and rubbed his face. I've been thinking about what you said about your family, about how they deserve to know you're alive. I kept thinking about how I would feel if my father had died without me getting to say goodbye, without him knowing I love him. Wei. I'm not trying to pressure you, he said quickly. I understand now, more than before, how precious these moments are, how much we regret the words left unsaid. Mai was quiet for a moment, then said, Can I meet him? Your father. Wei looked startled. You want to meet him? Are you sure? I'm sure, if he's awake and up for visitors. They walked together to the ICU. Wei's father, Wei Jian, was a man in his 60s, thin and pale in the hospital bed but with eyes that were sharp and intelligent despite his weakness. Father, Wei said gently, this is my friend Zhong Mai. Mai, this is my father, Wei Jian. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Wei, Mai said, bowing slightly. Wei Jian studied her for a long moment, and Mai had the unsettling sense that he could see right through her, that he understood exactly who and what she was. So you're the reason my son has been smiling more these past months, Wei Jian said, his voice raspy but warm. I was beginning to think he had forgotten how. Mai felt her cheeks heat. Your son has been very kind to me during a difficult time. My son is many things, Wei Jian said, shifting slightly in the bed. Brilliant, driven, sometimes too serious, but kind. That's not a word most would use to describe him in business. You must be special to bring that out. Father, Wei protested, embarrassed. But Wei Jian ignored him, keeping his focus on Mai. Whatever difficult time you've been facing, I'm glad Wei was there to help. He doesn't let many people close. The fact that he brought you here, that he speaks of you as a friend, that matters. So thank you for caring about my son. Thank you for being someone he can trust. Tears pricked Mai's eyes. She hadn't expected this kind of acceptance, this instant inclusion into Wei's family circle. Thank you, Mr. Wei. Your son has been. He's been a light in darkness for me. I'm grateful beyond words. After they left the ICU, Wei turned to Mai. Thank you for coming. For meeting him. It meant a lot. Of course, Mai said. Then, gathering her courage, Wei, I've been thinking about what you said about my family, and about what your father said just now. Maybe you're right. Maybe they deserve to know I'm alive. Wei's eyes widened. Are you sure? I don't want to push you. I'm sure, Mai interrupted. I'm not ready to see them in person. Not yet. But maybe a letter? Something to let them know I survived, that I'm safe, that I love them? Would that be possible to arrange? Anything is possible, Wei said firmly. We can have the letter delivered anonymously if you want, or I can send representatives to speak with them privately. Whatever makes you most comfortable. That night, back at the apartment, Mai sat down and wrote the hardest letter of her life. Dear Mama, Baba, and little brother, I don't know what you've been told about my disappearance, or what you've believed happened to me. I want you to know that I'm alive. I'm safe. I can't come home right now, and I can't explain everything that happened, but I need you to know that I survived. I think about you every day. I miss Mama's singing and Baba's stories. I miss little brother's mischief and laughter. I miss the mountains and the village and the life we had together. I'm not the same person who left for the school that night. What happened changed me in ways I'm still learning to understand. But the love I have for all of you hasn't changed. It's the same love I've carried since childhood, the same love that helped me survive when everything else was lost. I'm working with good people who are helping me heal and rebuild my life. Someday, I hope I can see you again. Until then, Please know that I'm okay. Please don't worry about me. A generous friend is going to help support our family financially. Please accept this help, not as charity, but as my way of caring for you from a distance. Use it for little brother's education, for Barbara's health, for whatever the family needs. It's my gift to you, given through someone I trust completely. I love you all. I'm sorry for the pain my disappearance has caused. I hope someday you can forgive me for not coming home. Your daughter and sister, Meh. She folded the letter with shaking hands and gave it to Wei the next day. He promised to have it delivered with appropriate financial arrangements for her family, enough to ensure they were comfortable, that her brother could finish his education, that her parents could retire from the back-breaking labor of farming. 2 weeks later, Wei brought her a photograph. It showed her family standing outside their home, her father holding the letter, her mother's hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Her younger brother was smiling through his own tears. My representative said they were overwhelmed, Wei reported. Your mother kept saying she's alive. She's alive over and over. Your father wanted to know where you were, but he accepted when my people explained that you needed time. Your brother asked if you were happy. I told them you were healing and that you had people who cared about you. Mai stared at the photograph through blurred vision, seeing her family's joy and grief mingle together. It wasn't the same as going home, as being with them. But it was a start. It was a way of maintaining connection while still protecting them from the full truth of what had happened. Thank you, she whispered to Wei. Thank you for this. He pulled her into a gentle hug, the first time they had embraced, the first time I had allowed anyone to touch her with affection since her rescue. She stiffened initially, then slowly relaxed into it, letting herself accept the comfort he offered. You're healing, Wei said softly. Every day, you're getting stronger. I can see it. Because of you, Mai said. You gave me the space and safety to heal.
No, Wei corrected gently.
I provided resources. You did the actual work of healing. You chose to fight, to survive, to rebuild. That's all you, Mai. That's your strength. As Wei's father recovered over the following weeks, Mai visited the hospital several more times. She found herself genuinely liking Wei Jian, with his sharp mind and kind heart. She also met Wei Ling, Wei's younger sister, who turned out to be warm and funny and immediately welcoming. So you're the famous Mai, Ling said with a grin when they first met. My brother has been so mysterious about you. Now I see why. You're beautiful. Is he treating you well? Because I'll kick his ass if he's not. He's been nothing but respectful and kind, Mai assured her. Ling studied her for a moment, and Mai wondered how much she knew, how much Wei had told her. But Ling simply smiled and said, Good. You make him happy. I haven't seen him this relaxed and genuinely content in years. So thank you for that. Being accepted into Wei's family, limited as the circle was, felt like another piece of healing. She was building a new life, new connections. She wasn't the village girl anymore, but she wasn't just a victim either. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger, more complex, carrying her scars but not defined by them. It was around this time that Mai started thinking seriously about her future. She had been drifting for months, focused purely on survival and recovery. But she was beginning to feel ready for more, for purpose beyond simply existing. I want to work, she told Dr. Lin during one of their sessions. I want to do something meaningful. What kind of work appeals to you? Dr. Lin asked. Teaching, like before, but different. I want to work with vulnerable populations, at-risk youth, maybe, kids who need support and guidance. I want to take what I've been through and use it to help others. Dr. Lin smiled. I think that's a wonderful goal. But let's make sure you're ready. Helping others heal when you're still healing yourself can be challenging. They discussed it over several sessions, working through Mai's motivations and making sure she wasn't trying to rush into something before she was truly ready. Eventually, Dr. Lin agreed that Mai was stable enough to start exploring options. Mai mentioned it to Wei during one of their dinners. I want to find work, she said. Something with education or social services. I'm not sure exactly what yet, but I need to start building toward a future, not just recovering from the past. Wei set down his chopsticks and looked at her seriously. Mai, you don't have to work. I've set up a trust fund for you, enough that you'll never have to worry about money for the rest of your life. You can pursue any education you want, any passion, without financial pressure. I know, Mai said. And I'm grateful, truly. But I need to work. I need to feel productive, to feel like I'm contributing something to the world. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense, Wei said, smiling. And I think it's incredible that you're ready for this step. Let me know if you need any connections or resources. I know a lot of people in various sectors who might be helpful. Actually, Mai said slowly, an idea forming. What if I work for you? For WeatherTech. Wei looked surprised. For me. You said your company works with agricultural technology. What if there's a role in community outreach or education? Working with rural farming communities to implement new technologies? I understand those communities. I'm from one. I could help bridge the gap between your technology and the people who need it most. Wei's expression shifted to one of admiration and excitement. That's brilliant. We've been struggling with adoption rates in rural areas because there's a trust gap. The farmers don't understand the technology, and our salespeople don't understand the cultural context. You could be exactly what we need. But I don't want special treatment, Mai said firmly. If I work for you, it has to be because I'm qualified and capable, not because of us, whatever we are, our friendship. Agreed, Wei said immediately. Tell you what, you put together a proposal for what this role would look like, what you'd do, how you'd approach the work. Present it to me formally, like you were applying for any other position. If it's good, you're hired. If it needs work, we'll refine it together. Sound fair? Sounds fair, Mai agreed. She spent the next 2 weeks researching, planning, and writing a comprehensive proposal for a rural education and outreach program. She poured everything into it, her understanding of village culture, her education background, her insights into the barriers that prevented technology adoption in traditional farming communities. When she presented it to Wei in his office, the first time she had seen him in his CEO role rather than as a friend, she was nervous but confident. Wei read through the entire 30-page proposal in silence, occasionally making notes. When he finished, he looked up at her with an expression that was all business. This is excellent work, Miss John, he said formally. Comprehensive, well-researched, and addressing a real need in our operations. However, I have some questions about implementation. They discussed the details for over an hour. Wei asked hard questions, pushed back on certain assumptions, suggested modifications. It wasn't the gentle, supportive friend she had dinner with. This was the billionaire CEO who had built an empire through sharp intelligence and higher standards. And Mai rose to the challenge, defending her ideas, accepting valid criticisms, thinking on her feet to address concerns. Finally, Wei sat back and smiled. You're hired. Welcome to WeatherTech, Miss John. You'll be heading our new Rural Education and Outreach Division. We'll start you at a director-level position with appropriate salary and benefits. You'll report directly to me initially until we determine where this division fits best in our organizational structure. Mai felt a surge of pure joy. Thank you, Mr. Wei. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Wei said. Then his formal demeanor cracked, and the friend returned. I'm proud of you, Mai. This is a huge step. It's terrifying, Mai admitted. But good terrifying. Like I'm finally taking control of my life again. Starting work at WeatherTech was both exhilarating and challenging. Mai had her own office, a small team to build and manage, and real responsibilities that mattered. She threw herself into the work, traveling to rural provinces to meet with farming communities, understand their needs, and develop educational programs about WeatherTech's agricultural technology products. The work was meaningful in ways that went beyond just helping the company. Mai was using her own background, her own story, without sharing the traumatic parts, to connect with the unveiling of hearts. 2 years had passed since the auction in Macau, and Mai barely recognized the woman she had been. The frightened, traumatized girl who had stood on that stage, being sold like property, felt like a distant memory, a ghost of someone she used to be. Now, she stood in a conference room at WeatherTech headquarters, presenting quarterly results to the board of directors. Her rural education and outreach division had exceeded all projections, increasing technology adoption in farming communities by 47% and generating substantial revenue while genuinely improving people's lives. Excellent work, Director Zhong, one of the board members said as she concluded her presentation. Your division has become one of our most successful initiatives. Mai smiled professionally, accepting the praise while maintaining the composure she had rebuilt piece by piece over 24 months. After the meeting, she returned to her office, a space she had decorated with photographs from village visits, thank you letters from farmers, and a small guzheng in the corner for when she needed to center herself during stressful days. Wei appeared in her doorway, leaning against the frame with a proud smile. You killed it in there. The board was incredibly impressed. I had good source material to work with, Mai said, gesturing to the technology reports on her desk. Your team builds excellent products. I just help people understand them. Don't minimize what you do, Wei said, entering the office and settling into the chair across from her desk. You've built something remarkable here. You took an idea and turned it into a thriving division that's changing lives. Mai felt warmth spread through her chest, the same warmth she felt every time Wei looked at her with that particular combination of pride and something deeper, something neither of them had yet named aloud. Their relationship had evolved in subtle ways over the 2 years. The twice-weekly dinners had become almost nightly occurrences. They traveled together sometimes for work, maintaining separate rooms but spending every moment outside of sleep in each other's company. They texted throughout the day, sharing jokes and observations and the small details that people in close relationships shared. But they had never addressed the obvious truth. Somewhere along the way, friendship had transformed into something more. Wei had never pushed, never presumed. He seemed to understand that Mai needed to come to these feelings in her own time, at her own pace. And Mai had been grateful for that patience, even as she felt herself falling deeper into love with this man who had given her back her life. What are you doing tonight? Wei asked, pulling her from her thoughts. No plans, Mai said. Why? I want to show you something. Can you meet me at the address I'm about to text you? Around 7. Mai raised an eyebrow. Mysterious. Should I be concerned? Only if you're opposed to pleasant surprises, Wei said with an enigmatic smile. That evening, Mai arrived at the address to find it was a small art gallery in the French concession. The lights were on inside, but she couldn't see anyone through the windows. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. The gallery was filled with photographs, large, beautiful images covering every wall. It took Mai a moment to realize what she was looking at, and when she did, her breath caught in her throat. They were all pictures from her work with WeatherTech. Farmers she had trained, smiling and proud as they used new technology. Village children gathered around her as she taught them about weather patterns and agricultural science. Elderly women laughing as Mai demonstrated a piece of equipment. Communities celebrating increased crop yields and improved livelihoods. But interspersed among the work photos were others, candid shots Mai hadn't known were being taken. Her playing guzheng at a village celebration. Her laughing at something a farmer had said. Her sitting quietly by a rice paddy at sunset, lost in thought. In every image, she looked strong, capable, alive. Do you like it? Wei's voice came from behind her. Mai turned to find him standing in the doorway, looking nervous in a way she had never seen him before. Wei, what is this? It's you, he said simply. It's the woman you've become. I wanted you to see yourself the way I see you, the way the world sees you. Not as a victim or a survivor, though you are those things, but as someone powerful, compassionate, brilliant. Someone who takes her pain and transforms it into purpose. Tears welled in Mai's eyes as she walked slowly around the gallery, taking in each image. This was her life now, not the nightmare of the past, but the reality of the present. A life she had built through courage and determination and the support of someone who believed in her. There's one more, Wei said quietly, gesturing to a wall that was covered by a curtain. Mai walked over and pulled the curtain aside. Behind it was a single photograph, blown up to massive size. It was the original image that had started everything. Her in the Yunnan village, teaching children, her face partially turned away. But next to it was a second photograph, taken just last month. Mai in a similar pose, teaching farmers in a different village, but this time her face was fully visible. She was smiling, confident, fully present. Below both photographs was a small plaque that read, "The journey from darkness to light, Zhong Mai." "This is how I see you," Wei said, coming to stand beside her. "Not just as the woman I rescued from an auction, but as the woman who rescued herself, who took unimaginable trauma and refused to let it destroy her, who built a new life, a meaningful career, who reconnected with her family and found ways to help others. You did all of that, Mai. Not me. You." Mai couldn't speak through her tears. She simply reached out and took Wei's hand, holding it tightly. "I need to tell you something," Wei continued, his voice shaking slightly. "Something I've been afraid to say because I didn't want to pressure you, didn't want to make you feel obligated because of everything I've done for you. But I can't keep it inside anymore." He turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. "I love you, Zhong Mai. Not as a project or a responsibility or someone I saved. I love you as a person, your strength, your intelligence, your compassion, your resilience. I love the way you play music when you think no one is listening. I love how you throw yourself completely into helping others. I love your terrible jokes and your competitive streak at board games and the way you sing old folk songs in the shower." Wei paused, taking a shaky breath. "I know the way we met was complicated and traumatic. I know there's a power imbalance because of what I did for you, because you work for me, because of the money and resources I have. I've thought about all of this, worried about it constantly. But these past 2 years have been the happiest of my life. And if there's any chance you feel even a fraction of what I feel." Mai stopped his words by reaching up and touching his face gently. "Wei, I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you that first night in the hotel, when you promised to help me bear my trauma. I fell more in love during every dinner, every conversation, every moment you respected my boundaries and supported my healing. You gave me back my life, and then you let me decide what to do with it. How could I not love you?" "But the power imbalance," Wei started to say. "Isn't there anymore?" Mai interrupted. "Maybe it was at the beginning, when I was broken and helpless and you held all the cards. But I'm not that person anymore. I have my own career now, my own income, my own life. I could walk away tomorrow if I wanted to, but I don't want to. I want to be here, with you, building a future together." Wei pulled her into his arms, and Mai went willingly, pressing her face against his chest and feeling his heart beating rapidly beneath her cheek. "Are you sure?" Wei whispered into her hair. "Are you absolutely sure this is what you want?" "I'm sure," Mai said firmly. "I've never been more sure of anything." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the gallery surrounded by images of Mai's journey, until finally Wei pulled back slightly and looked down at her with such tenderness it made her heart ache. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, always respectful, always asking permission. "Please," Mai breathed. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, both of them afraid of pushing too far too fast. But it was also perfect, a promise of new beginnings, of love built on respect and trust and genuine connection. When they finally parted, both were smiling through tears. "So what happens now?" Mai asked. "Now we build a life together," Wei said. "Not because you owe me anything, not because I saved you, but because we choose each other. Every day, we choose each other." "I like that plan," Mai said, then paused. "But Wei, I need to do something first. Something important." "What's that?" "I need to go home. To the village. To see my family in person. It's time." Wei nodded, understanding. "When do we leave?" "We?" May questioned. "You don't think I'm letting you face that alone, do you? Besides, if we are really doing this, if we are really building a life together, your family should meet the man who wants to marry their daughter." Mai's eyes widened. "Marry?" Wei grinned, looking suddenly young and mischievous. "Eventually. When you're ready. I'm a patient man, Mai. I can wait. I've got nothing but time." Part 7. Coming home. The journey to Yunnan province took most of a day, even with Wei's private transportation. They flew to Kunming, then drove for hours through increasingly rural landscapes until they reached the village where Mai had grown up. As the car wound through mountain roads, I felt her anxiety building. She had been gone for over 2 years. She had sent letters and money, had maintained contact through Wei's representatives, but she hadn't seen her family face-to-face since before her kidnapping. What if they couldn't accept what she had become? What if they looked at her differently, saw her as damaged or shameful? What if the physical presence of their changed daughter was too much to bear? Wei seemed to sense her spiraling thoughts. He reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. "They love you. That hasn't changed." "You don't know that," I whispered. "I do, actually. I've met them several times over the past 2 years, checking in, delivering your letters and gifts. Every time, your mother asks when you're coming home. Your father says he prays for you every day. Your brother has your picture on his desk at school. They're not going to judge you, Mai. They're just going to be grateful you're alive." The car finally pulled up to her family's home, a small traditional house that looked much the same as she remembered, except that it had been recently renovated. New roof tiles, fresh paint, a small addition on one side. The money she had sent through Wei was being put to good use. Before Mai could even step out of the car, the front door burst open and her mother came running out, her weathered face streaked with tears. "Ma! My daughter!" Mai fell into her mother's arms, and suddenly she was 12 years old again, small and safe, wrapped in unconditional love. Her mother smelled like jasmine tea and wood smoke, exactly as Mai remembered. "Mama," Mai sobbed. "Mama, I'm home." Her father appeared next, moving slower, more reserved, but his eyes were bright with tears. He pulled both women into his embrace, his strong farmer's arms encircling them. "My daughter has returned," he said, his voice breaking. "The heavens have shown mercy." Mai's younger brother, now 17 and taller than she remembered, hung back initially, shy and uncertain. But when Mai opened her arms to him, he ran forward and hugged her fiercely. "I missed you," he said simply. "I missed my sister." They all went inside, where neighbors had already gathered. Word traveled fast in small villages. Everyone wanted to see Mai, to welcome her home, to hear about her life in the big city. Mai was overwhelmed by the warmth, the acceptance, the complete lack of judgment. No one asked what had happened to her during the missing months. No one questioned why she had stayed away so long. They simply celebrated her return, sharing food and stories and laughter. Wei hung back initially, giving Mai space to reconnect with her family. But eventually, Mai's mother noticed him standing politely in the corner. "And who is this?" she asked, looking between Mai and Wei with knowing eyes. "Mama, Baba, everyone, this is Wei Chen," Mai said, reaching back to draw him forward. He's the man I'm going to marry. Eventually." A collective gasp went through the room, followed by excited chatter. Wei looked momentarily panicked. They hadn't discussed sharing this information yet, but then he saw the joy on Mai's face and relaxed. "It's an honor to meet you all properly," Wei said, bowing respectfully to Mai's parents. "Your daughter is an extraordinary woman. She's changed my life in ways I can't fully express." Mai's father studied Wei carefully, and Mai held her breath. Her father was a traditional man with strong ideas about propriety and family honor. Would he accept this wealthy stranger from the city who had such a complicated connection to his daughter? Finally, Wei Jian spoke. "You're the one who has been helping our family, who has made sure we were cared for when our daughter couldn't be here." "Yes, sir," Wei acknowledged. "And you care for my daughter? You'll treat her with respect and honor." "I'd give my life for her," Wei said simply, and the raw truth in his voice was undeniable. Mai's father nodded slowly, then extended his hand. "Then you are welcome in our home, Wei Chen. Any man who values my daughter so highly is a son to me." The celebration continued late into the night. Mai played guzheng while her brother sang folk songs. Wei charmed everyone with his willingness to try local moonshine and his genuine interest in village life. Neighbors told stories of Mai's childhood, embarrassing and sweet in equal measure. At one point, Mai found herself alone with her mother in the kitchen, preparing tea for the guests. "You've changed," her mother said quietly, studying her daughter's face. "You're stronger. Sadder too, but stronger." "A lot happened, Mama," Mai said carefully. Bad things that I survived. I know, her mother said, surprising her. I'm your mother, Mai. I don't need details to know that you suffered. But I also see that you didn't let that suffering destroy you. You became more, not less. And that young man out there, he helped you, didn't he? He saved me, Mai admitted, in more ways than one. Then I like him very much, her mother said, pulling Mai into another hug. And I'm proud of you, daughter. So very proud of the woman you've become. That night, Wei stayed with a local family while Mai slept in her childhood bed, surrounded by familiar smells and sounds. She lay awake for hours, processing the day, the acceptance, the overwhelming love she had been welcomed home with. She had been so afraid that her trauma had made her unworthy of her family's love, that what had happened would create an unbridgeable distance. But instead, she found that love didn't work that way. Real love didn't require perfection or purity. It simply required presence, authenticity, and the willingness to keep choosing each other despite hardship. The next morning, Mai took Wei to the small school where she had once taught. It was still operating, though with different teachers now. The children gathered around her, curious and excited about the stranger who had returned to their village. Miss Mai, some of the older students called out, children who remembered her from before. You came back. Mai felt tears well up again. I did. I came back to see all of you. She taught an impromptu lesson, just like old times, and Wei watched from the back of the classroom with such love and admiration in his eyes that several villagers noticed and whispered to each other about wedding dates. Later, as they walked through the village, Mai showed Wei her favorite places, the stream where she had played as a child, the mountain path where she used to hike, the small temple where her family prayed. I understand now why you wanted to come back, Wei said as they stood overlooking the valley, the village spread out below them. This place shaped you. These people are part of who you are. I thought I had lost this, Mai admitted. I thought what happened had severed me from my roots, made me unfit to come home. But I was wrong. You can't lose who you fundamentally are. You can only temporarily forget. And have you remembered? Wei asked gently. I'm remembering, Mai said, piece by piece. They spent 3 more days in the village, and each day Mai felt more settled, more whole. She realized that healing wasn't about returning to who she was before the trauma. That person was gone, and that was okay. Healing was about integrating all the pieces of herself, past and present, pain and strength, loss and growth, into a new, more complex whole. On their last night, Mai's father asked to speak with both of them privately. They sat in the small family courtyard, tea cooling between them, as the old man chose his words carefully. My daughter, he began, I want you to know that when you disappeared, a part of me died. I blamed myself for not protecting you, for letting you walk home alone that night, for not being strong enough or wealthy enough to keep you safe. Baba, it wasn't your fault, Mai started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish. When you sent word that you were alive, that you had survived, I felt joy but also shame, because I hadn't been the one to save you. Another man had done what I could not, and I struggled with that, with the feeling that I had failed as a father. Tears streamed down Mai's face. You didn't fail. You could never fail me. But then I met Wei Chen, her father continued, turning to Wei, and I saw how he looked at my daughter, not with pity or possession, but with respect and genuine love. I saw that he had given her not just safety but freedom, not just resources but purpose. And I realized that sometimes being a good father means accepting help, means being grateful that someone else could provide what you could not. He reached across and clasped both their hands together. So I give you my blessing, both of you. Build a life together. Build it on the foundation of what you've both already overcome. And know that you carry my love and my gratitude with you always. Thank you, Father, Wei said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise to honor your daughter and your family for the rest of my life. That night, lying in her childhood bed for the last time before returning to Shanghai, Mai felt something she hadn't experienced in over 2 years, complete peace. Not the absence of pain. The trauma would always be part of her story. But peace in knowing that she was loved, that she belonged, that she had a future worth fighting for. Epilogue. 5 years later. The conference room at the United Nations in Geneva was packed with delegates from 40 countries. I stood at the podium, no longer nervous about public speaking, no longer afraid of being seen. Human trafficking is a 21st century slave trade that generates an estimated $150 billion annually, she said, her voice clear and strong. But what we often forget in the statistics are the individual lives destroyed, the dreams stolen, the futures erased. I know this because I was one of those statistics. A murmur ran through the crowd. It was the first time I had spoken publicly about her experience. She had testified confidentially in trials, had worked behind the scenes with international organizations, but she had never stood before the world and claimed her story. 5 years ago, I was kidnapped from my village in China and sold into a trafficking ring, Mai continued. I experienced horrors that I wouldn't wish on any human being. But I also experienced something else, the power of one person's decision to help. One person who saw my humanity and chose to act. She gestured to the audience where Wei sat in the front row, watching her with pride and love. Next to him was their 18-month-old daughter, Chen Lin, playing quietly with toys while Wei's sister watched her. That person gave me a chance to reclaim my life. But more importantly, he gave me the space to heal, the resources to grow, and the freedom to choose my own path. And I chose to use my experience to fight the system that victimized me and continues to victimize millions. Mai went on to describe the work she had been doing, the foundation she and Wei had established that provided rehabilitation services for trafficking survivors, the legislative initiatives they had supported in 5 countries, the prevention education programs they had implemented in vulnerable communities. But we can't fight this battle alone, Mai concluded. Every person in this room, every government represented here, has the power to make a difference. Not by seeing survivors as victims to be pitted, but as human beings with agency, strength, and valuable perspectives. We are not broken. We are not less than. We are fighters, and we need allies in this fight. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. When Mai finally left the podium, she went straight to Wei, who stood and embraced her while their daughter babbled happily between them. You were magnificent, Wei whispered in her ear. I am so proud of you. We, Mai corrected, kissing him softly. I'm proud of us, of what we've built together. Their daughter tugged on Mai's sleeve, wanting attention. Mai scooped her up, holding her close. Little Lin had Wei's intelligent eyes and Mai's stubborn determination, a combination that promised interesting teenage years ahead. Later, at the hotel, after Lin was asleep and they had some quiet time together, Wei pulled out a worn photograph. It was the original image from Yunnan village, the one that had started everything. Do you remember when I first saw this? Wei asked. I couldn't even see your face clearly, but something about you called to me. Fate, Mai said, leaning against his shoulder. Maybe. Or maybe I just recognized strength when I saw it, even in a photograph, even when you didn't know I was looking. Mai took the photograph and studied it. That young woman teaching children in a dusty village, unaware that her life was about to be destroyed and then rebuilt into something she could never have imagined. I don't think of myself as that person anymore, Mai said thoughtfully. But I'm grateful to her. She survived long enough for me to exist. You're both the same person, Wei said, just at different points in an incredible journey. Mai smiled. Listen to you, getting philosophical. Fatherhood does that to a man, Wei said, grinning. Then he grew more serious. Mai, I want to ask you something. Something I've been thinking about for a while. What is it? The trafficking ring that held you. We destroyed it, helped put dozens of people in prison, rescued hundreds of victims. But there are so many more. So many organizations still operating. What if we dedicated ourselves fully to this fight? Not just through the foundation, but personally. What if we made it our life's work to dismantle these networks? Mai considered the question carefully. She had built a good life over the past 5 years, meaningful work, a loving family, peace, and security. Part of her wanted to protect that, to not risk the stability she had fought so hard to achieve. But another part, the part that had survived unimaginable darkness and emerged stronger, knew that her survival had to mean something beyond just her own happiness. Yes, she said finally. But we do it smart. We don't take unnecessary risks. especially now that we have Lynn to think about. We use our resources, our connections, our knowledge to fight from a position of strength. And we never forget to take care of ourselves and each other, because we can't help others if we destroy ourselves in the process. Agreed, Wei said. We do it together, carefully, and with the understanding that our first priority is our family. They sealed the agreement with a kiss, and later, as Mai drifted off to sleep in Wei's arms, she thought about the incredible arc of her life. She had been stolen, sold, and nearly destroyed. But she had also been saved, loved, and given the chance to rebuild. She had returned to her roots while also growing beyond them. She had survived trauma that would have broken many people, and she had transformed that trauma into purpose. Most importantly, she had learned that human worth wasn't determined by what happened to you, but by what you chose to do afterward. That love could heal even the deepest wounds. That strength wasn't the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to be vulnerable anyway. And she had learned that sometimes the worst moments of your life could lead to the best, if you were brave enough to keep living, to keep fighting, to keep hoping. The final word. The next morning, Mai woke early and went to the hotel room's small desk. She pulled out her journal. She had been keeping one since Dr. Lin first suggested it in those early days of recovery, and began to write. Dear younger me, right now, you're standing on that auction stage in Macau, terrified and broken, wondering if this is how your story ends. I wish I could tell you what happens next. I wish I could show you that in 5 years, you'll be speaking at the United Nations, married to a man who loves you completely, raising a beautiful daughter, and fighting to protect others from what you endured. But maybe it's better that you don't know. Because if you knew how hard the journey would be, how much pain you'd have to process, how many times you'd want to give up, you might not find the strength to take the next step. And then the next. And then the next. So instead, I'll just tell you this. You're stronger than you know. You're worthy of love and respect and happiness. What's happening to you is evil and wrong, but it doesn't define you. You define you. Keep fighting. Keep surviving. Keep hoping. Your future is bright, and you're going to do extraordinary things. With love and pride. Your future self. Mai closed the journal and looked out the window at Geneva's beautiful cityscape. Somewhere in this city, in cities all over the world, there were women like her younger self, trapped, afraid, suffering. But there were also people like Wei, people with resources and compassion who were willing to help. And increasingly, there were people like her current self, survivors who had transformed their pain into purpose and were fighting to end the cycle. The battle was far from over. Human trafficking still destroyed countless lives every day. Evil still existed in the world, wearing different faces and operating in different ways. But so did good. So did love. So did resilience. And as long as people like Mai and Wei kept fighting, kept helping, kept refusing to accept that this was just the way things are, there was hope. Mai's phone buzzed with a text from Wei. Lin is awake and asking for you. Also, she somehow got yogurt in her hair. Parenting is glamorous. Mai laughed, a real, joyful sound, and headed back to her family. Her story had started in darkness, in a place of horror and despair. But it hadn't ended there. It had continued through courage and love and the simple, profound choice to keep living. And now, 5 years after a Chinese billionaire bought her freedom in a black market auction, Zhong Mai was finally, truly free, not because someone had purchased her, but because she had reclaimed herself. That, she realized, was the real victory. Not the money or the success or the public recognition, but the fact that she had survived evil and remained good. That she had experienced the worst of humanity and still chose to believe in the best of it. That she had been broken and had rebuilt herself into something stronger than before. Her story wasn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending. She still had nightmares sometimes. She still struggled with trust and anxiety. She still carried scars that would never fully fade. But she also had love, purpose, family, and hope. She had a future she was actively building rather than a past she was passively surviving. And in the end, that was everything. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, and comment.